Most people think that writing a good book is a game of good information and luck. But that's wrong. What you actually need is a simple, step-by-step system that gets readers to recommend your book to others without needing clever marketing or social media campaigns. So in this deep dive, I'm going to show you exactly how to design your book for word-of-mouth recommendability. And you're probably thinking to yourself, will this actually work for me? Well, over the past 10 years, I've worked with close to 2,000 nonfiction writers, and almost every single one of them is making the same mistake. They follow the writing advice that we give in school, like be nuanced, be objective, and readers hate that. So the next 3 points of advice I'm going to give you are going to be a software update, helping you unlearn the writing rules from school and learn to write from the reader's perspective. And just for a quick example for how to design your book for word-of-mouth recommendation, here's something that happened to me last week. So I met a friend of mine for coffee the other day, and in the middle of our conversation, she brings up a book called Bad Therapy. Maybe she thinks I need some therapy. It's a pretty provocative title, and the book itself takes a pretty bold stance, which is that therapy might actually be making kids more anxious. So that's great because it's the kind of thing that everyone has an opinion about, and it's a really polarizing topic. But as we started discussing the book, I came to find out that she hadn't actually read it. So this got me thinking, why would she recommend a book that she hadn't even read? But the more I thought about it, the more this actually made sense. Not logically, but socially. And from the publisher's perspective, this is gold. This is exactly how word-of-mouth recommendation works. A bold title, a strong opinion. You don't even need to crack the spine of the book open to feel like you got the gist of it. And that's kind of the point. My friend wasn't really recommending the book. She was signaling something about herself. Recommending Bad Therapy was her way of saying that, hey, I'm the kind of person who questions the status quo. I'm tuned in to edgy, thought-provoking ideas. I think therapy is for pussies. If you actually knew her, you would know that she would never say something like that, but that's the gist of it. The point here is that the book became a tool, not for reading, but for identity. And this is exactly how ideas spread. Think about social media. What gets shared more? The nuanced, balanced content or the bold, emotional takes? We all know the answer. It's the hot takes, not because they're more thoughtful, but because they're more shareable. And this is what so many nonfiction authors don't understand. They think that they need to be nuanced and objective because that's what we taught them in school. But if your goal is to have your book read and shared, then you need to understand that you are not in the business of logic and nuance. You are in the business of persuasion. And to do that effectively, you need more than just facts. You need ethos, pathos, and logos. So what does that mean? Well, ethos is your credibility. It's why someone should trust you. Pathos is the emotional impact, how your message feels. And logos, that's the logic. That's the actual argument that you're making. So if word-of-mouth recommendability is what you want for your book, then you need to stoke the pathos and ethos by following the 3V framework. Now, for the first V of this framework, the important thing to understand is that readers who are confused do not leave 5-star reviews. The secret, if you want good reviews for your book, is to make the book's promise so clear that anyone who is not the right reader can tap out before they've even bought it. Vague promises invite the wrong crowd, and this crowd punishes you for wasting their time. Now, if you want proof, take a look at these 2 books, which tackle the same problem, which is creating offers that customers actually want. The first one is called Value Proposition Design. It was published in 2014, and it has today about 2,300 reviews. The second one, Alex Hormozi's $100 million offers. Now, that was published a lot more recently in 2021, and as of today, it has more than 26,000 views. Same topic, different promise. Hormozi spells it out on the cover. How to make offers so good that people feel stupid saying no. Now, as a promise, that is bold, concrete, and irresistible. Compare that with the promise of value proposition design. It sounds smart, but it's a little bit fuzzy, so few readers feel certain that it's right for them. And the ones who misbuy this book are quick to complain. Now, to tell you the truth, I use this same filter on this YouTube channel. I usually open videos these days with something like, if you're a nonfiction writer, or I put nonfiction right there in the title. That way, writers who are interested in writing fiction bounce, and that's perfect because it's better to lose the wrong viewers than to collect a bunch of downvotes and salty comments. When you make a specific promise, you do two things. You magnetize the right people, and you let the wrong people excuse themselves. The ones who stay with your book know exactly what to expect, and when you deliver on that promise, they're going to leave you 5-star reviews and tell all their friends. So here's how you can nail the promise of your book. The most important thing is to name the change. If you're writing a nonfiction kind of prescriptive book, then you need to be able to answer the question, what will be different in my reader's life after the last page? Of course, we want our readers to learn something, but what does learning mean? Okay, learning means your behavior changed. A great example of this is touching the stove. Okay, so if you touch a stove, you burn your hand, that pain is information. Now, if you take in that information and your behavior doesn't change, that is, if you touch the hot stove again, you haven't learned anything. But if you touch the hot stove, you burn your hand, take in the information, now your behavior changes, well, there you've learned something. So if you say you want your readers to learn something from your book, then you should be able to say, how is their behavior going to change after reading it? Once you've named that change, I want you to say it out loud. Pitch your book in one tight sentence to a real person and then stop talking. Just watch their face and listen to the sounds that come out of their face. This is really important feedback, and when you get it, even when they're confused, I want you to sit through it, okay? So every time you get a puzzled look on somebody else's face when you explain to them the pitch of your book, that's telling you what you need to sharpen. So you want to keep on tweaking that promise until you can deliver it to a new person in 1 or 2 sentences very clearly. And fourth, when strangers get it on the first try, it's time to lock it in. Freeze that line. That is the book's subtitle. You're going to put that on the back of your book and on the Amazon product page. That's why the first part of the 3V framework is called a vow. When you make a clear promise, you attract the right readers. And when you deliver on that promise, you get rewarded with recommendations and 5-star reviews. Now, for the second part of the 3V system, I know you want to write a bestseller, but what if the advice for making it to the New York Times bestseller list is exactly what's making your book fail? I see this every week. Early drafts are packed with tips for beginners and experts, solopreneurs and Fortune 500 executives. One chapter on mindset, the next on advanced analytics. The impulse to pack in as much information for as many different readers makes sense. If your book helps more kinds of people, surely it will sell more copies, right? Well, not quite. That logic works only if your end game is a mass market bestseller. James Clear pulled it off with Atomic Habits. And the sneaky thing about this mega bestseller is that it's not really a book about habits. It's actually a book about elite performance and deliberate practice. But by positioning this book about habits, he aligned it with a pain that almost everyone feels. That is, I can't stick to good habits, which is brilliant for book sales, but it's not the right strategy if your book is meant to attract clients, build your authority, or solve a very specific problem for a very specific reader. Let me show you a better model. When I launched this channel, Writer Science, I made the classic mistake. I said, I help writers. It sounded smart, broad appeal, right? But then came the inbox chaos. I had a few videos take off and I opened up a coaching offer, but I started getting requests from all kinds of different writers. Fiction authors asking about their story arcs and fantasy writers asking about world building and people trying to write memoirs, asking about how to find the hidden meaning in their own personal experience. Don't get me wrong, these were all talented writers, but they were just not the people who I could genuinely serve. And that's when I sat back and realized that this isn't a channel for writers. Like, writers already know how to write. But after 10 years as an English professor where, I work with scientists and engineers, so I help people who don't know how to write translate their own experience and research into specific value for specific readers. So they don't need my help, and honestly, a lot of those early consultations didn't even really want my help. They were kind of debating me. So who am I here for? I'm here for experts, people who have expertise and knowledge and need to translate that into specific value for specific readers. That's my jam. So I rewrote everything, the homepage, the offer, the tone, the voice, and rather than talking to writers, I began talking to expert writers, people who want to turn their knowledge and expertise into a book that does the heavy lifting for their business. And almost overnight, things started to change. Yes, I lost some subscribers at the beginning, but when my messaging got sharper, my leads got better, and my sales calls started feeling more like conversations with people who were already halfway sold. And that's because the pain I described was the exact pain that they feel. And this is the real power of narrowing your audience. When you name someone's pain precisely, they stop scrolling and lean in. Because you're not just another voice with advice, you're someone who gets it. And don't just take it from me, here's Alex Hormozi explaining how the pain is the pitch.
I think that if you can accurately describe a prospect's pain in their own language, in their own experiences, you can persuade them to buy whatever your product is based on how well and how knowledgeable they believe you to be as a function of how specific you were about the pain they're experiencing. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm talking to a business owner that's doing $10 million a year, and I'm like, this is what's going wrong in IT, right? And this is what's going wrong in sales. And this is what's going wrong in your marketing. And this is what's going on in it. They're like, okay, I get it. You know where I'm at. I'm like, right. Do you want my help? I don't have to make a promise. If I can describe the pain so acutely, and they're like, he can't know that pain this well and not be able to deliver.
That's why the second V in this system is known as the victim, the specific person who's in pain and looking for relief. Don't try to write to everyone. Write for the person who's stuck, whose hair is on fire, who thinks, I can't keep doing it like this. And once you've got that victim locked in your sights, what's the next move? Well, for the last V in the system, it's important to understand that the fastest way to get readers on your side is to pick a fight. People crave belonging, and one of the quickest ways to create that feeling is by naming a shared enemy. When you call out what your reader is against, they trust you to lead them toward what they want. It shows not just what you know, but what you stand for. Take, for example, Harley-Davidson. In the 1980s, they were losing pretty bad to Honda and Yamaha, which were faster, quieter, and smoother bikes. Harley couldn't win on performance, so they leaned into identity. So while these Japanese brands pushed sleek designs and silent engines, Harley went with loud pipes, leather jackets, and American steel. They stopped selling motorcycles and they started selling rebellion. We see the same moves with other brands. It's Yeti versus flimsy disposable gear, Patagonia versus fast fashion. Here's how I use this system on this YouTube channel. As everyone knows, in recent years, we've seen the advent of AI writing tools, and now it seems like everywhere you turn, we're just being flooded with this polished sounding fluff that completely ignores readers. That's my villain, and that's the villain of this channel. Now, by calling out that kind of writing slop, I really make this channel a beacon for writers who actually care about their readers. We also see this in the example that I gave earlier of bad therapy. It does the same thing, taking a swing at the therapy industry, pharmaceuticals, and soft parenting. When you have that kind of a fight against a villain, it makes your message so much more magnetic. It attracts the right people and repels the wrong ones. Now, most experts default to logic and nuance, but identity and trust run on emotion. So when you have a clear enemy, it clarifies what you stand for and starts to tap into that pathos and ethos at the same time. So here's how to take your stand. Think about your reader, that specific reader we identified earlier, and think about what that reader already hates, but maybe hasn't named. Maybe take a broken system, some lazy trend, or a shiny new shortcut that causes real harm. 2, call it out plainly. Make that villain visible. In the world of copywriting, we call this throwing stones at their enemies. So by taking a stand, you're also standing up on behalf of the reader, and they're just going to cheer you on. Now 3, be sure to show how your book gives readers the tools that they need to fight back and win. They're going to be using your arguments in conversation, the same way that my friend did with that book, Bad Therapy. When you give your reader an enemy, they will carry your book like a badge of honor. Now, this 3V system is all about positioning your book so that it attracts the right readers. But how do you make sure that they actually enjoy your book when they start reading it? Well, to make sure that your ideas make it off the page and into the mind of the reader, watch this video next, because it's going to show you 4 writing hacks based on reader psychology that are some serious weapons for your writer's toolkit. So be sure to go check it out.